So the agenda for the talk today. So first off, I'll introduce you to Brandwatch and the work that we do at Brandwatch. And then I'll dive into some of the results from a study that I recently conducted into consumer perceptions of plant-based meat products. And then I'll leave you with the calls to action that we managed to unearth over the course of this research. Okay, a bit about Brandwatch to begin with. We were founded in 2007. We were founded in a lovely seaside town in the UK that some of you may have heard of, Brighton. And we've expanded a lot since then. We have over 600 employees and over 2,200 clients, including big names like Unilever, Dell, and Walmart. We're also fun, as illustrated by the picture on this slide. This was taken at our annual get-together in Brighton last year. Okay, a bit about the work that we do. So at Brandwatch, we started with social data, and we have the biggest archive of data from social media of any company in the world. And we've since expanded into survey as well. We recently acquired a company called Curiously, and Curiously replaces banner ads in over 50,000 smartphone apps. So essentially allows our clients to ask their consumers any question that they want. It's also a great way to validate some of the themes that emerge from the research that we do using social media as a data point. So we call this combining of social, of survey, and first-party data digital consumer intelligence, and it allows our clients a 360-degree view of their consumers. So the study that I'm about to walk you through focuses on social media data alone. So let's delve a little deeper into the unique characteristics of data from social media. So the beauty of using social media as a data source is that it's completely unprompted feedback. It's just people talking without anybody going in and asking them to comment on a specific topic or asking them any direct questions. So that makes the feedback very honest, and it avoids the issue of researcher bias altogether. Yeah, so it also allows you, which is another really great thing, to find out things that you might not have thought to ask for using other methods. So to sum up, data from social media allows us to understand what people are thinking, what they're saying, and what they're doing. We can learn a lot from the way that people structure what they say on social media. So the order in which they put their points, the emotional intensity they attach to different words, the emojis they use, and so on. Okay, hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview. So now we're going to delve into the study itself. So I looked into consumer conversations online, talking about experiences with plant-based meat products. And to give you a bit of background on how the study came to be, it was a pro bono piece of research that I decided to do for an NGO that I admire greatly called the Good Food Institute. The Good Food Institute works to facilitate and accelerate the shift towards a more sustainable food system. And their corporate division works directly with food manufacturers. They advise these food manufacturers on how to make tastier plant-based meat products and how to make them more accessible. And so together we decided that it would be most valuable to look at consumer conversations around the taste, the texture, the smell, and the appearance of plant-based meat products to understand how consumers were finding these products. To do this, I wrote a Boolean query, which allowed me to gather data from Twitter, from Reddit, and from online forums. And it returned 7,292 relevant mentions over the course of a year, from the 19th of December 2018 to the 18th of December 2019. And the focus was only on the US market. Okay, so what did we find out? Just to set the scene a bit about the topic itself, plant-based meat. So this graph here shows Google trend data for searches around vegan meat. So we can see over the last 5 years that there's been a steady rise in searches for vegan meat, which shows us that there's interest there and it's growing. But what are people saying about these products? Do they like them? Do they taste good? Is there anything that they consider to be unmet? Okay, so the main finding from this research was that consumers either want plant-based meat products to taste the exact same as the meat that they're trying to imitate, or be completely different, so not allow any opportunities for comparison. You seem to all agree. So there are certain elements in traditional meat products that people really value, and they want to have those replicated in the plant-based meat products. Plant-based meat products that follow the kind of close imitation product strategy are really appealing to meat lovers looking to reduce their consumption of meat products for whatever reason, environmental, animal rights, whatever it may be. And these people, they're meat lovers, they are primed to expect a certain eating experience when they buy these plant-based meat alternatives. And when they fail to deliver, they're really disappointed. They react emotionally. So there are some products, though, on the market, plant-based products, that are really similar to the meat products that they're trying to imitate in all of the ways that matter most to consumers. So some of those ways are, for example, juiciness. A lot of feedback was that plant-based meat products were dry. One consumer even said it felt like eating a carpet, which can't be nice. And they also want the products to smell the same as the meat products that they're looking to imitate. Again, some interesting consumer feedback here. A lot of people said that plant-based meat products smelled like cat food or like dog food. Not ideal. They also really want these products to brown when they're cooking. They want them to form a crispy outer layer. And you can see here from the comments on this slide that people were really pleasantly surprised when a plant-based meat product was able to give them the same satisfaction without any of the guilt. And they even went as far as to call out how amazing the companies that produced these were. So there are some things in meat products that people really value and want to have replicated in their plant-based meat alternatives. There are others they like less. So some textural elements people were repulsed by, so things like gristle, fat, skin, bones, tendons. And here we found that there was an opportunity for plant-based meat producers to underline this in their messaging, to say, look, we don't have any of that. Okay, so the two most famous companies that produce these close imitation style products are Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat. How many of you have heard of them? Yeah, most people. So I went into our tool to look at the volumes of conversation around these two brands. And we can see that since April 2019, there's been a lot of interest. So volumes of conversation haven't dropped beneath 10,000. And some of the peaks that you see are driven by unlikely partnerships, like with McDonald's, for example. So we see that they're really changing the face of meat alternatives in the eyes of consumers. Jordan Peele, the actor, even said he wasn't able to tell the difference between beef and an Impossible burger, and lots of people seem to agree, going on the shares and likes. So yeah, these companies have invested in R&D and positioned differently. And the level of interest that you can see on this graph just shows that there is a big market for these kinds of products. But these kinds of products are not the only product strategy. We also found from social media data that a lot of people were actually looking for something completely different, as I said a few slides before. So some people, for example, vegans and vegetarians, or people who just don't like the taste of meat, they want products that they can't compare, something completely different. So they're repulsed by meat itself, so when the product's too like meat, they don't like it. There are also people who aren't necessarily looking to reduce their consumption of meat, they just want to integrate more new products into their diets, so variety seekers. And there are people who really love food, and really lots of people who really love food, I think, and they really value true innovation in the kitchen. They want new adventures in the kitchen. They kind of look down on copies of an original as like a botched job. Like, why would you do that when you could just create a new category? And an example of this kind of strategy, where a product fulfills a similar function to an animal product, but doesn't directly look to imitate it, that's really successful, is hummus. So hummus is something that maybe 20 years ago not many of us had very often, or maybe hadn't even heard of in Western Europe. And now most people love hummus. I definitely love hummus. I don't know about you. And it can be used in a similar way to, say, butter or cream cheese, but people are really unlikely to be comparing the two, right? They're not going to say, oh, this butter is not hummusy enough. I don't know. So through creating a completely new thing, consumers' comparisons are fairer and more positive. Okay, so to wrap up, some calls to action that we were able to uncover for the NGO to take to the food manufacturers that they work with. So first off, there is room for close imitations, and these products should continue to be developed. But they should really call out the absence of certain textural elements that people don't like very much. So gristle, fat, or skin. And this kind of strategy is likely to work particularly well for really widely loved products like chicken, for example, that notoriously has quite a lot of small bones and skin and the things that people don't like. And then the second main call to action was make completely new products that people aren't able to compare at all to the original, and call them something different too, so they're not primed to expect anything that they've tried before. So they can be more open to actually liking these products. So, and then another call to action, which is not actually on this slide, is to do more research. So basically, I mentioned different types of consumer segments, like foodies and variety seekers and meat lovers and so on. For food manufacturers, it'd be great to understand more what the binding characteristics of these different groups are and the incidence in society to be able to decide what kind of product should I make and how should I speak to the consumers that I'm targeting with these products. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a taste of what you can find out with social media data. That's it.
Thank you very much, Holly. Questions, comments? We have several in the back row.
This thing again, so I'm going to start with.
Thanks for your talk, it was really interesting. I just wanted to ask a question about, you showed a really good graph at the start with Google Trends data. Yes. And there were some really big spikes during that period. Mm-hmm. And I'd just be interested to know whether you were able to sort of, with your data, look at what kind of things were driving those particular spikes. Mm-hmm. So, for example, particular, outside of food brands, but also in the media, like sure. Netflix documentaries, that kind of thing that can drive this kind of topic, because we're really interested in what drives these kind of societal issues. Sure.
So things like campaigns can drive different peaks, like in the UK, Veganuary, for example. You always see a big peak in January around Google searches for vegan meat. But our tool allows us to look at the peaks on social media. So the second graph that I showed you there, those peaks we were able to identify as Beyond Meat communicating that they were launching an IPO. There was also their partnership with McDonald's. So those kinds of things that are going on can, yes, they're at a company level, but that can just drive interest in the category at large, and we can see that in our tool. If that answers your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Catherine Montrade from France, sorry. Was very, very interesting, very new also topic, at least for me. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about the profile of the consumers who are rather willing for meat, something which looks like meat, and the other ones who are more looking for innovative vegetable, veggie recipes.
I don't want to use conjecture too much. I wasn't able to look into that for this particular piece of research. I think that that's the million-dollar question. I think that's what we need to know.
Okay.
That's what food manufacturers need to know as well. I have a hunch, but I'm not going to say it because that's just...
So you need more results then. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you very
exactly.
much.
Sure.
Hi.
You have it.
Do you think that here?
So I can't. Oh, sorry.
Do you think that the difference in the insights was also based on the audience? So if you're strictly vegetarian and have never tasted meat or don't have an interest, then your the texture that you see actually grosses you out. Did you?
Definitely. Yeah. So I was able to profile to some degree because people actually did say in their comments, "I'm vegan and vegetarian," or "I love meat, but," a lot. So yes, vegans and vegetarians' palates changed. They got used to plant ingredients, and so when a product tried to mimic something and did so really successfully, they were just like, ooh. I mean, I can speak for myself here as well. I tried the Beyond Burger and thought it was horrible. I'm a vegan, and I was like, oh my God. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
My question is, I understand you've gathered social data from different platforms probably.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any difference by the way people talk on certain platforms about the same topic? Like, for example, are Twitter people more positive or negative compared to, I don't know, Reddit people, for example?
My colleagues here can maybe help me with this answer, but I'll tell you what I personally have found. There's a really good question, and certainly there is a difference in tone and the topics that people choose to discuss on the different platforms. We find on Twitter in general, people are more kind of serious and they talk in an informative way. On Instagram, for example, people are more aspirational. They're trying to project a certain image of themselves. On Reddit and on forums, you see really, really rich information. I'm like, wow, how open are people about all kinds of topics? Yeah, because they're more focused on a theme. Often we find that people write a lot and in depth, and it seems very honest. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Sure.
Can I do a follow-up question? Sorry. So, if in the sense that you take, if you do a report, you'll take the average of impression of all these different platforms and their different opinions, or you skew one platform over the other?
We tend to mainly have data from Twitter, because there's just more volume there. More people are active on Twitter, so that's kind of how that pans out.
Thank you.
Sure.
You make recommendations based on sort of social media, but social media is not representative of the general, and you talk about consumers without qualifying that as people talking about these things on these sources. So you're making generalizations from a single source. How do you balance that out when you make these rather large recommendations? Users may not be the same as non-users, lapsed users the profile differences. How do you address that with a single source approach?
Sure. So the research objective here was to understand more about experiences, first-hand experiences. So we needed to only have people who had quite a lot of experience using these products, and those were the people that were on social media. So for the purpose of this research, I think the method worked well. In general, if you want to ensure representativeness, is that the word? Then, of course, validating through a survey, for example, is an option. And we'd recommend like using social as part of a suite of approaches.